It's a story I've talked about countless times on this channel by now. Rockstar Games in the early 2000s were on top of the world thanks to the Grand Theft Auto series moving into the third dimension. But one thing I only summarized when I reviewed the whole series is the controversy surrounding it, with concerns it glamorized violence or it was connected to real-life crimes, mostly because of the adult themes. And there was a larger moral panic over violence in video games compared to today, and the GTA series became an easy target which followed Rockstar in almost all their games, which at times got so ridiculous, like Bully for example, that I didn't even bother mentioning it in my reviews. However, right in the middle of that success was something so shocking it was banned in multiple countries. Even before they were Rockstar North, DMA Design, they had time to make something else other than Grand Theft Auto. While one team was working on GTA, Rockstar president Sam Houser also wanted a horror game in their library. But he didn't want any supernatural forces, monsters, or aliens, just humans at their worst.
This is some of the best snuff I've seen.
Dubbed Project Manhunt, the first thing director Christian Cantamessa thought of when looking at one of the concept drawings was a scene in A Clockwork Orange where the homeless man is being assaulted by the droogs. He even considered making that the premise, and the developers evolved it into a cat-mouse scenario where the mouse had a way to fight back. A stealth game where you had nothing to start with and had to pick up whatever you can scrounge. As well as a commentary on extreme violence in our culture at the time, whether it's through movies, TV shows, or video games. So extreme, in fact, the development team admitted they were unsettled with how violent this game was going to be when making it, and almost created a mutiny within Rockstar. Former employee Jeff Williams said, with Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City, the player could complete all the missions without killing innocent civilians, or at least minimize casualties as best as you can. It was as violent as you chose it to be. Whereas Manhunt was pure violence all the time, and it was more detailed and realistic, which made them feel icky. But at the end of the day, the number one objective here is survival. Manhunt was released for the PlayStation 2 on November 2003 and the Xbox and PC on April 2004. But not the GameCube, because good luck trying to release something like this on a Nintendo console. Oh. Wait a minute. Yeah, I don't ever recall seeing this game on shelves as a kid. The only thing I knew about it for a long time were the action figures at Zero Store in GTA San Andreas. And that could be because multiple countries threw a plastic bag on the game being released, including Germany, Malaysia, South Korea, and New Zealand only lifted the ban as recently as 2023. And though it was released in Australia, it was recalled from shelves not even a year later and is still currently banned down here, so copies are impossible to come by at a reasonable price. And that's why I thought for a long time that I would never review Manhunt despite the popularity of Rockstar Games on this channel. Fortunately, Square-Eyed Jack had copies of Manhunt 1 and 2 for the PS2 because of course he does, look at his collection, and was generous enough to let me borrow his copies so I can finally do the impossible, a ColourShed review of Manhunt. Don't forget to sub to Jack's channel while you're at it. You're a legend, mate.
It looks like this goes all the way to the top. I can't trust anyone, least of all the police, and time's running out. I've got to get the one piece of evidence that will expose Starkweather without a shadow of a doubt.
A death row inmate named James Earl Cash is being executed by a lethal injection. Basically what would happen if a GTA protagonist got busted and was actually charged for his crimes, because you better believe that will warrant a death sentence.
Hey, tough guy, wake up. You're not dead. Well, not yet, anyway.
However, it was never a lethal injection but a strong sedative, and Cash wakes up a couple of days later, alone and without a clue of what's going on.
Do exactly as I say, and I promise this will be over before the night is out.
Known simply as the director, he has made Cash the star of a series of snuff films, putting a price on his head and hiring the worst humanity has to offer to hunt him down. But if Cash survives the ordeal, he'll guarantee him his freedom. With cameras surrounding the abandoned buildings and alleyways of Carcer City, Cash encounters multiple enemy types including criminal gangs, skinheads, paramilitary groups, and war dogs. And he has to kill or be killed, all in the creepy eyes of the director watching every move for his personal pleasure.
You've left your old life, your old self behind. I'm all the family you need now.
This feels like a grittier version of The Running Man or The Most Dangerous Game, or a way less stylized version of what would become Mad World on the Wii, an homage to grindhouse, exploitation, and snuff films. Keep in mind, this preceded Saw and Hostel, films set in Rust Belt buildings full of blades, stained of blood everywhere. You can almost smell it. That's the first image that comes to mind. And the opening credits and intro cutscenes set that tone perfectly. The synthesizers, the found footage VCR effect, the fuzzy filter, which which might look like I'm capturing the gameplay on the lowest settings, but it's deliberate, part of that gritty presentation Manhunt is going for.
They're using them as bait, Cash. Bait. I know!
It takes no prisoner, and everybody on and off screen is pure evil, including our main protagonist who was just on death row. And you think that would make for a miserable experience. You certainly won't be looking away with the way people are taken out, which I'll get to. Even by the halfway point, it feels like Cash is making no progress whatsoever. Despite a perfect run, it feels pointless and you're just going through the motions. It's all style over substance. But I suppose that is the point, and it's meant to make you question if you like the violence displayed on your screen, to challenge the player if they can handle it. Levi Buchanan of Chicago Tribune called it a significant moment in gaming that if Manhunt was successful, it would speak volumes about America's fascination for violence. Side note, playing this on the PC SX2, and I made sure to use the nightly version this time. There were a couple of stages where I thought it was virtually impossible to advance. One stage in the basement it kept freezing and stuttering, but after the second attempt it was normal. However, the crane stages, oh my god, what happens is you enter one, the controls completely freeze, even the pause button. But there is a solution, fortunately. Change the EE cycle rate to 50% here in the emulation settings, and change it back again after the crane stage is over. Just something to keep in mind if you're using this emulator to play it. I'll be honest, Manhunt set a pretty poor first impression, particularly in the control department. I'm used to third-person views where you can move the camera around with the right analog stick freely, like Splinter Cell for example. But Manhunt controls like GTA 3 and Vice City, the camera actively follows where you move, the trigger buttons make you strafe, and if you use the right analog stick it goes into first-person mode, which was useful for looking through windows a couple of times, but otherwise make movement feel very clunky and makes it very difficult to see around the corner. You can use the D-pad to have a peek around and a dedicated cover system, but it doesn't do much. So literally right from the beginning, apart from the first enemy, I was being spotted on every encounter. Enemies have very unusual senses, like they'll see you if even a hair is peeking from the corner, and yet you run to cover, they're just like, oh, where did he go? Never mind. The objective on every stage is obviously survival. Get through these areas as quietly and gruesomely as possible, with multiple weapons scattered all over the place, with some parts requiring a specific one to unlock your way through, or to kill everyone in an area before you advance. And after you complete a stage, you get scored and rated based on how quickly you get through and the brutality of the kills.
Look, Cash, let's get some clarity to the proceedings, okay? I need executions in quick succession.
As it turns out, the longer you hold the attack button from behind, the more brutal the kill, marked by the color. At first I thought, oh no, they censored this version in the PAL region. But no, I just forgot to hold the attack button. Needless to say, I had a rubbish first chapter as a result. It's all about timing and margin for error. Enemy movements might feel random at first, but at least they're the same when you restart. By the way, not being able to restart from the last checkpoint straight away, there is no option in this game, which is annoying. The game's standouts are the stealth kills, which even to this day are some of the most brutal ever programmed. Like, if this video doesn't get demonetized by YouTube for being too violent, I'll be very surprised. Pleased, but surprised. So many of the kills have enemies literally off with their heads. Blood can splatter on the wall if you're near one, the struggling grunts from the enemies, the crunching. These kills look more like they were done with motion capture, and it makes GTA 3 and Vice City feel comic and over the top by comparison, since some of the power to run that game needed an open world map, so the animations and character models aren't as polished. The brightness is clearly lower in Manhunt, which hides the detail, and the camera angles, it wants you to see these kills up close and personal. And because of the GTA series, Rockstar already had that reputation by politicians and support groups which deemed this the work of Satan. Then Manhunt arrives, pushes the boundaries even further, and created the perfect storm of violence and outrage. Joe Bucker claimed that Manhunt teaches kids how to kill someone and uses vicious, sadistic, and cruel methods to kill, even though the rating clearly states that kids shouldn't be playing this game. Anyway, Andrew Ryan called Manhunt shockingly easy to play with a radar pinpointing where the enemies are, weapons are always there, and a lot of you would have heard this by now. Quote, Manhunt is so user-friendly that any sharp 12-year-old could navigate through the entire game in one sitting. Be afraid, end quote. It even became linked to the murder of Stefan Pekira, with claims that the murderer, Warren LeBlanc, was influenced by the game after a copy was found in his bedroom. UK stores responded by pulling the game from their shelves, and likely played a role in the game being pulled here in Australia. But despite Jack Thompson's best efforts filing a £50 million lawsuit against Rockstar and Sony on behalf of Pekira's family, the police denied the game had any links to the murder, and later discovered the copy belonged to Pekira, not LeBlanc. To summarize the reactions, it was very easy for people not into video games to judge Manhunt based on the first hour, where it does come across as a title where all you do is kill people and nothing more without any logic whatsoever. It felt too close to home for some, because unlike other horror-themed games like Last of Us, Resident Evil, or Silent Hill, there are no supernatural or apocalyptic forces, just humanity at its most psychotic. But hey, to look on the bright side, or dark side in this case, it's another part of Manhunt that enhances the horror. This game feels so illegal, so forbidden, like it came from some bootleg backlog and was distributed to the wider world. That's the vibe I get when playing this game, given the style and real-life controversy it generated. And as I persevered through the clunky controls, got the hang of it, and better understood how enemies behave and the weapon variety increased, I eventually warmed to the experience as the story progressed. There are a few similarities to the established stealth titles. Like Metal Gear, there's a codec in Cash's ear with the director frequently telling you to hurry up.
Move it, Cash. I'm not keeping you alive to sulk in the dark.
We gotta go in there as a platoon and drag that snail out of his shell.
And like Splinter Cell, you have an invisibility indicator where you use the dark shadows to your advantage. They're really strong, like I rarely got caught entering them, and it made running away from the cursing enemies a little fun game in itself. However, on the flip side, if they don't have a gun, it's easy to get in the habit of letting the enemy chase you, then hide in a shadow to lure them into a trap once their backs are turned because your stamina bar is so long. That must be where the difficulty options are based off.
He's a runner! Look at him go!
The ground surface you're walking on, walking into things, running instead of walking, killing an enemy all cause noise, which is another key characteristic in the gameplay. Like, you don't want one enemy to hear another begging for his life nearby, and of course, none of the guns have silencers. Speaking of sound, I really like the music when things get intense. I like when another layer is added based on the levels of suspicion from the enemy, something that will be used in later Rockstar games. Though at times it can get repetitive, especially as the strategy to killing enemies silently never changes, since you're always roaming that familiar dark Rust Belt environment. And the weapons used by the enemies are mostly identical on multiple stages, so you're seeing the same kills too many times, which dampens the shock value. I'm also not a fan of the action stages, whether it's fighting an enemy one-on-one or shooting your way through, because aiming is auto-locked, weapon range is dreadful, and Cash can fire only one bullet a second regardless of what he's firing. It feels badly put together because the controls aren't designed for this sort of gameplay, so all you're doing is timing your shots from cover or hoping you're close enough to get a headshot. It feels incredibly luck-based.
That's the one! That's the one!
But as you advance, the areas are more open, there are less spots to hide in shadows, or at least they're narrower, and enemies have weapons that inflict more damage, sometimes killing you instantly. So once you get the hang of the controls, it has a very good difficulty curve. Using the L1 button in places like being able to rotate without it going into first person mode made it easier to lurk around the corners smoothly. Knowing when the enemy will turn around, keeping innocent people alive and hidden. You're not even thinking about how nasty these kills are because that stealth instinct eventually kicks in. I'll give Rockstar North somewhat the benefit of the doubt because Manhunt is over 2 decades old at the time of this video. This was their first attempt at a stealth game, and they developed this before a lot of these franchises existed. Oh, and they were also busy making a lot of Grand Theft Auto titles as well. In fact, despite the controversy and bans in multiple countries, Manhunt was still popular enough for Rockstar to greenlight a sequel, which took the unsettling violence to a level not many video games even dare reach. It shows the size of their balls, that's for sure. Rockstar have always denied making games to deliberately stir up controversy, but this one feels like it did. Because when even you have the developers admitting they crossed the line and how it nearly created a mutiny within the company, then you have made something. That said, Manhunt should never have been banned, and it's ridiculous that it still is today. It was at a time when there was so much moral panic over violent video games. Take-Two also admitted part of it was their fault for keeping development and info secretive before release, which led to rumors about the game that weren't true. But 20 years later, and we have way more violent looking games that are passed with flying colors, at least resubmit it with an R18+, like GTA 3 when the uncut version was resubmitted. But at least I played the game now, and I can conclude that it's not a murder simulator. While not as polished as a stealth game compared to its rivals at the time, the shooting mechanics in particular are borderline broken, the psychological horror themes are solid. You feel hopeless with what you got since it's only a few weapons. Every few stages it's like, well, kidnapped and onto the next set of stronger enemies to deal with empty-handed. Like if this was like rubbish as, you know, hatred for example, it can easily be written off as juvenile, but it's honestly decent. You just need to be patient is all, like any stealth game really.
Not guilty.
Thanks everyone on Patreon, including Anthony Cossins, Bibbs, Brittleback, Cooper Munn, Darcy McIntosh, Emmanuel Figueroa, Eric Barboza, Atmosphere, Night Kid Gaming, Peter GT, Ruben Pekog, Sam Sneed, Stefano Sivo, Tick445, Thomas Rosendale, and Zeta Slow. Square Jack for lending his copy of the game, and everyone for watching this video. I cannot believe a Manhunt review on ColourShed actually exists now. I mean, better late than never, right? Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, click the notification bell, support on Patreon, join the Discord server, follow on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Thanks again for watching, and speak to you soon. Spenny out.